Hello and welcome to True North, a series where we talk about the lesser known side of an entrepreneur. Today we are joined by Saumil Majumdar. Hi Saumil, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Tell us your inspiration behind starting of your own and your, to become an entrepreneur.
So it was really more a why not than a why. Why not become an entrepreneur? I had worked for 3 years with Wipro and I was looking at something else. And at that point, this thought of becoming an entrepreneur sounded exciting. And it was like, if it doesn't work, you can always get a job. Back then, that's how it started. I remember talking to my wife and saying, do it for a year. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to Wipro. It's now been 20 years.
But you've really had a bumpy ride and a lot of failures on the way. But what gave you that conviction to go on and think that I will make it someday?
Backgrounds and typical education context don't prepare you for failure. So the first time it happened for me when Q Support, my venture before Sportz didn't work out, it was fairly tough. You've never failed. You might not have succeeded as much as you wanted to. But failure, especially in a startup context, is very stark. It's right in front of you and you can't negotiate with it. Right? It's what it is. So that was a tough time. 99, 2000 odd when the whole thing happened, that was fairly tough. At which point, to my mind, the only conclusion I made, so Q Support used to do remote tech support back in 1999. And in hindsight, maybe ahead of the curve, whatever. What I realized was that if the fundamental business model makes sense, sometimes you might be too early, sometimes you whatever. If you just hang in there long enough, again, if the fundamental business model makes sense, that's a big if, then at some point the market will come when this business will, ride the wave. You have to be alive long enough. So when we did Sports Village, the only decision I took was to say, we'll stay with the model. At some point, the sports market will take off. And when it takes off, we'll be in the right place. So to that point, I think in the Sports Village context, it was really a question of hanging in there, the belief that the market will happen, and looks like starting to get there.
Right. And what were some of the learnings from failure?
As they say, success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. You actually see lot of the real people who have the real belief in the vision staying back when things start getting tough. And a lot of the people who are slightly more superficial in their commitment start reacting, dysfunctionally, if I may use that word. So you see the real belief shows up. So, the real test is when the stakes are high, right? When the stakes are low, there's adequate funding, business is growing, all is well, everybody will have belief. The real test of belief in an idea is when you're broke. Yeah, I know more about what not to do than what to do in entrepreneurship, but this is one thing about what they should do for sure.
And while you're trying to, stay alive, how do you motivate your team and your co-founders? How do you keep their focus as well?
So I think in my mind, this whole notion of the founder or the entrepreneur as an alpha male, alpha female who's kind of rallying everybody around, I think is slightly oversimplified. I think ventures work because the whole set of people believe in it, one. And they believe in it because the vision fundamentally is appealing enough. That's why they believe in it. They're not dumb. So people can't be carried away with some charisma or some PowerPoint slides. If the vision is compelling and there is a fair chance, not an easy chance, but a fair shot at achieving that vision, we have found brilliant people wanting to stay with you.
Tell us some of the challenges that you're facing at this point in time, now that you've scaled up and on your growth path.
Interesting things on this whole notion of ownership. When you're in the early stages, because the vision is so compelling and it's fresh and it's unproven, sometimes it's almost like everybody has their own view of what the vision is going to be. Two, at that point, everybody is doing everything. So there's very high ownership. As you start growing, you start getting into this notion of sharper clarity of what this business actually is. So maybe you thought it was like this and it turned out to be like this. Sometimes there's a gap between what the original team thought it would be like to what it turned out to be. So that can create some stress in the system. The other is as you start growing, you start having more functional roles. As you have more functional roles, you start driving more accountability at a role level.
Exactly.
There's an earlier stage, there's far more accountability at a company level. Everybody doing everything.
Yes.
And ownership is because everybody doing everything. Sometimes as you have more drive for accountability, a sense of ownership can start to lag because you're now holding me accountable for this role. So I'm now saying, okay, I did my job, but that's not my job because you're holding me accountable here. So as you grow, one of those issues is how do you balance accountability with ownership? And the only way we found it, I wouldn't say that we are outstandingly successful at it, but we've been able to do some stuff at it, is to stay with the impact. That look, after we do all this, those kids get to play. Those people get to play. The magic of sports is spreading. Therefore, this fight is worth it.
Yes. Saumil, what's your true north?
At this point, getting 100 million people to play is the direction we want to go in. So I think sports and play as a way of life and getting everybody to experience the magic of play, magic of sports is what we're trying to do.
And would you recommend or would you suggest that your fellow entrepreneurs and peers also play a sport to sort of help their business? Would you have a message for them?
I think in the entrepreneurship context, very often we ignore the entrepreneur himself or herself. We talk about investors, talk about co-founders, talk about team, talk about customers, all that. But the individual or the person giving positive energy to this system, which is always giving negative energy, right? Customers have gone away, funding didn't happen, some other questions came. It's all negative energy coming up. You have a bad idea, it's not working, this doesn't make sense, and you're constantly giving positive energy saying, no, it'll work, stay. How do you get positive energy yourself? So as entrepreneurs, I think all of us need to figure out what is our source of positive energy. It could be a walk, it could be a book, it could be a trek, it could be play. But whatever is the source of positive energy, I think we need to charge ourselves every morning. And I definitely recommend sport and play as one very good source.
Do you have a role model?
Yes, Mr. Premji.
Which is your favorite author or book?
Well, I read a lot of non-fiction, so.
And if not an entrepreneur, then what?
I guess my default career would have taken me in the IT industry to some IT business head role or something.
What scares you?
The prospect of not being able to execute on a tremendous goodwill and a foundation that we've been built.
A word would define you.
Playful.
Thank you so much for your time and we wish you luck.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.